Simply Legal. I'm your host, Geraldine Warren, longtime Medfield resident and practicing attorney here in Medfield. Each month we present a topic that we hope the viewers find not just interesting but also useful, and I'm sure that today will be no exception. I have with me today Ron Griffin. He's our Medfield VA Veterans Agent and Shine Counselor. Ron and I are going to discuss today the ins and outs of special enrollment for Medicare, Medicare Advantage, and Medicare Part D, as well as we're going to discuss the observation issues that have come up, the new standard that you don't have to show improvement in some cases, and finally a new program called OneCare. So welcome, Ron.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Ron, just to start, I know most of the viewers probably know who you are and what you do, but for those that are just joining us, do you want to go ahead and give them an idea of your job description?
Well, as a Shine volunteer, I volunteer out of the senior center, so I'm usually there every other Tuesday morning. And as a volunteer, I volunteer through HESCO, which is a nonprofit in Sharon, and each Shine counselor is accredited by the state of Massachusetts through the Department of Elder Affairs. So every year we have to be recertified, and that's usually an exam. And there's about 450 of us around the state, and we're all volunteers. And the piece that I think is important is the I in Shine, and that stands for information. We don't have products, we don't have agendas, we just have information, and that's what we try to do, is make people well informed on their choices.
Well, that's great, and I think that ties right into what we're going to talk today about, because Medicare, we need to give the viewers the information on Medicare and the special enrollment periods you and I have talked about. I thought before we got into that, maybe you could just give the viewers an overview of what the regular enrollment is and when you have to unenroll, and then we can get into the special circumstances.
Sure. Every year from October 15th to December 7th is open enrollment for Medicare, in which everybody can reselect their plans for the following year, so that their choices are effective on January 1st. Usually they're pretty much locked into to that for the entire year, their decision. From January to February, we have what we call a disenrollment period for those who select a Medicare Advantage plan. And that's when they can test it out, and if it doesn't work out for them, they get 3 months to get out of the plan and back into traditional Medicare.
Now, let's say they miss that period, that unenrollment period. Are there ways that they could still maybe decide to get back into the original Medicare plan? Yes,
there are several ways. They're called SEPs, or special enrollment periods, and there's a slew of them. In fact, there's 9 pages of special enrollment periods that are available for people. So we try to find a condition that is satisfied, the open enrollment, so you can change. And some of those, maybe somebody is in a nursing home. Certainly when people are in a nursing home, generally want to get them out of a Medicare Advantage plan because usually they're out of network, in the nursing home, and we want them to be in
able
network.
to see it,
right, and see physicians in network, because they can't get out to the doctor's office. So just being in a skilled nursing facility can generate, or a nursing home can generate, a special enrollment period for you. And the same is true when you get out. Maybe you get out of the nursing home and you come home and you do want a Medicare Advantage plan. Well, now you get a special enrollment period to get in, so it can be used both ways. So there's a lot of different angles, and what is, I think, a value of a Shine counselor is that we pride ourselves in learning all those strategies, and then we interview the person and we try to find a life event that might qualify them for the exception. In rare cases, we can't find a way to get out of a plan.
Well, I know for myself as an elder law attorney, I find the Shine counselor like yourself is really important, because we don't know all the ins and outs of Medicare. So when I have a client come in or a significant other saying, this is what's going on with my spouse, and I will sometimes have to say, well, let me call Ron and see what's going on, and maybe he can help you, because we don't know all the ins and outs of Medicare like you do. So that's why for the viewers, if an issue comes up, Ron is available to answer your questions with regards to the Medicare. So the big one you thought was with a nursing home issue if they wanted to get out of the HMO, the Medicare Advantage, and go back
That's
into...
usually the one. And that's because they're out of network. Most people that enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan, they really do like it. Seldom is it a bad choice for them. And that is really the bad choice. Sometimes, they move out of the area. Well, certainly if you move out of the area, you're out of network. Maybe you're in a Tufts HMO and you move to Taunton. Well, Tufts HMOs doesn't cover the Taunton area, so now you're out of network. So that would qualify you for an SEP as well, so that you could re-enroll. So those are the kind of scenarios that happen. Usually it's mostly the prescription drug plan that they want to get out of.
Let's talk about prescription drug plans.
So the prescription drug plan, and there is another, I think there's 30 some special enrollment periods for prescription drug plans. Now, my most popular one is to get out of a plan in the middle of a year is the state prescription advantage program. So people aren't aware that when you sign up for the state prescription advantage program, what you get is a free one-time change that you can execute anytime you want during the year. So if you are in the state's program and you want to change Medicare Part D plans, you can do so one time a year.
But Ron, if they're in the Medicare Advantage plan, they can't have original Medicare then. They have to.
Sure.
Oh, they can.
Or they can have anything.
Oh, okay.
And be in the state program is a override of the prescription drug program. So it's backup. Traditionally, why they do it, enroll in the prescription advantage, is to cover them in the donut hole. What happens with prescription advantage in the donut hole, the co-pays remain $30 or $18, where if you're not in that, you're paying 47.5% of the cost of the drugs in the donut hole. So it's kind of like a donut hole protection. And there's income limitations, but they're very, very high. So I think it's about $38,000 for singles and $48,000 for a married couple. So the income, and they don't care about assets. So a lot of folks can qualify for it. So to get back to our first question, one of the things you can do is say you're in a Medicare Advantage plan and you want to get out of it, and what I might have you do is enroll in Prescription Advantage, then you get the free change. We will change prescription drug plans and get you out of the prescription drug plan in the Medicare Advantage one. And by default, once you're not in the Medicare Advantage prescription drug plan, then you enroll in another one. They have to disenroll you from the Medicare Advantage plan. So now we've got you back to traditional Medicare.
So just to be clear for the viewers, if you're in original Medicare A and B, you can get into the Medicare Advantage prescription D plan? You can get into that state plan?
I don't care. You can get into Prescription Advantage no matter what you have.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to
make. You can have employee retiree plans.
Okay.
You can have Medicare Advantage. You can have traditional. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, they just piggyback on whatever policy you have.
Okay, that's great to know. Now, one of the other things that's always coming up is the observation issue that many seniors are finding is a problem, specifically when they might have to go to a nursing home, a skilled nursing facility for rehab, or for a shorter period of time than for custodial care, and they want to have Medicare cover as many days as they can, or they may end up staying in the nursing home for custodial care, but it's unsure whether they will need to or not, so they want to get as many days as they can possibly get covered by Medicare. And the problem we're finding is that the hospitals are not always admitting them, but keeping them as observation.
Right.
And then they're not being covered because they weren't admitted in an inpatient facility and then transferred. And you have to be inpatient for 3 days for them to cover.
Correct. And that's the key. It's the requirement for coverage in a skilled nursing facility, and it's not for custodial care. Medicare will never pay for custodial care. You have to be there for medical reasons. And to do that, you have to have 3 days inpatient in the hospital before you can qualify for the skilled nursing facility. And if we look back into what might happen, this is a case where very good decisions turn out to be undesirable consequence. So they changed the rules for several years ago, back in 2006 or 7. And what they did is they realized that a lot of people that were in the hospital were getting discharged and then readmitted a few days later. And what they did is they said, we need to have more accountability there. So what Medicare said is, if you have someone come back in, then obviously you didn't discharge them at the right time. So on that reentry, we're not going to pay you as much.
So they're kind of penalizing the hospital for the reentry.
For the reentry. And another thing that was happening at the same time is just saying, we have a lot of people that are making false claims in Medicare. So they tightened up the rules, and they gave these folks the ability to go out and find fault with the Medicare bill payments, and then go after them for fraud to refund the money. And of course, where do those folks go? Where the money was, which was in the hospital stays. So what you had is the hospitals trying to defend themselves from, if you're just an observation, then you weren't admitted and you didn't get discharged, so you didn't come back. So you're not subject to that penalty. And then likewise, the people that are fighting fraud are going out there trying to find cases where the hospital admitted people and really didn't need to. There was no medical reasons to admit them, and try to cut down on those claims. So the fallout is, for the people that are in the hospital, it's not so bad. So while you're in the hospital, Medicare A, if you're on observation, is not paying. But Medicare B is. So Medicare B is 80% of the bill, so you're subject to 20% of the bill. And then a lot of folks have the Medicare supplement plans, Medigap plans that we just talked about, and they take over the rest of the bill, so they really don't see any financial impact because they didn't pay a bill. Where it shows up is when they get transferred into the skilled nursing facility. Now they didn't meet that 3-day requirement for in-hospital care because there were observations. And then they may not find that out until they get discharged from the skilled nursing facility like 20 days later. Well, if it's 20 days later and Medicare is not going to pay it, that's a huge bill. Now you have an $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 bill, and of course you didn't see it coming, really, and that's the danger. And sometimes the administrators are going back after you've been discharged from the hospital and reclassifying your stay in the hospital from inpatient to observation, and that really messes everybody up. So they're working on it in Medicare now. They'd like to just do away with that whole rule, so it doesn't happen, because it's very subjective whether you're inpatient or on observation. No one seems to know at the time which one you're in, and if you ask somebody, I don't know that they can tell you you're in observation or you're in inpatient.
Well, I did get, I downloaded something from CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid and Medicare, which most people knew that Sebelius was the director of. So we refer to it as a CMS, and they had published something about examples of when you would be considered inpatient and when you would be considered observation. And the key to all of the examples they gave is that you have to know that your physician is admitting you, and that's the key part to this. And a lot of times the client or the patient will be vulnerable, and they aren't able to think right that time. That's not the first thing they're thinking about, am I observation or am I admitted? So it's good for the viewers to know in case case, they're dealing with parents or grandparents, that if you see that there could be a possibility that they have to be admitted to a skilled facility, that you have to make sure that they are being admitted, and you need to talk to the physician, because it does take a doctor's order for them to be admitted, and that's the key part to all of the observation versus admission. It has to be a doctor's admission. So that's one thing that the viewers can be sure of, is when they go to the hospital to check with the physician and see if he's actually admitting their spouse or parent or grandparent, and not just having them as an inpatient observation. So I thought that was something, reading the directions on the CMS, that until Medicare changes that's something the viewers could be sure of.
And just to follow up one more thing, an advantage to a Medicare Advantage plan is they don't have that 3-day rule. So
That's
those folks don't have this problem.
So we get them into the skilled nursing facility, and if they end up having to stay, we can then switch them out. We'll have Ron get them out through a special enrollment period. Now, when we're talking about this, I thought one other thing we might want to mention with the observation versus admission is that whole "are you improving" standard. And that's one thing that we've been working on, and I know that Vermont Legal Aid brought a case, it's called the Jimmo case, in federal court, and it was a class action suit that said the Medicare manual didn't state that there had to show improvement in order for them to get X amount of days. So before the ruling was made by the federal court judge, the Obama administration agreed to change the manual, at least part-time for right now, to get rid of that standard, which they call Medicare to End, Improve or You're Out standard. So, right now that standard is now out. So you don't have to show that you're improving right now, and I'm not sure how long that's going to be.
But I'm sure a lot of the facilities, like this usually shows up in a skilled nursing facility, and a lot of those facilities are a little hesitant to have this repealed later on and then fight for the bill. So you're not finding, they still want to follow the older rules because they're sure that they're going to get paid. And what usually we're talking about is physical therapy. That's the piece of the care that we're talking about. And the physical therapy program usually ended when the patient no longer showed signs of improvement. And they do realize that it's just important to maintain whatever improvements that they had. And so sometimes you have to keep the physical therapy going in order to keep that amount of skills that you have achieved from deteriorating.
And that could definitely come up with people with Parkinson's. I mean, it's hard to show necessarily improvement in that case, yet they could need that extra time for physical therapy or whatever they may be in for, even though they're not showing improvement. Alzheimer's patients may not necessarily show improvement. End-stage renal disease. I mean, there are certain disease processes that you may not show improvement, but you should be entitled to your full amount of Medicare paid stay. Coming to that, like where we talked about observation versus admission and the improve or you're out standard, what are their rights? I know as a lawyer, my first thing would be appeal. So do you want to just talk about what a patient's rights would be?
Well, there's a lot of appeal things. That, in fact, for every piece of Medicare, there's an appeal process. So one of the things, the first one is that if you're in the hospital, the first step you take is the discharge orders. If you don't like the discharge orders, a lot of hospitals in the past, I don't think it's true as much now, but they were trying to rush the patients home before they were ready. And before the things were in place to care for them once they got home. Well, if you don't like the discharge plan, which has to be given to you for 24 hours, you can appeal it right there. And they have no choice but to keep you inpatient until the appeal is done. Well, that's going to take a day or two anyway before the appeal process happens. It's done right there in the hospital through a separate administrator. And so in that 2 days, usually you have improved enough where you could even agree with the plan that was originally presented. Because some people get discharged to go home, and this is why they come back a lot too, because they weren't ready to go home yet. So with Medicare A and B, there are 5 appeal levels. So the first one is you redetermine to the company that handles Medicare claims. So understand there's private companies that decide Medicare claims, and you can appeal to them. And then you can have them, second class is to have that reviewed by a qualified contractor to review their decision. Then you can go in front of an administrative law judge. Then you can go to appeal to the Medicare Appeals Council.
Now,
I don't know if anybody ever gets that far.
Can I ask you, is this still inpatient while they're in the hospital?
This has anything to do with Medicare A or B.
Okay,
Same
okay,
process, but for while you're still in the hospital, the first step is to agree with the discharge. You know,
Okay.
and most people won't say, we can't do this, we can't make this happen. You've got to speak up and say, can't make this happen, I need to appeal this. Well, the doctor thinks you can do it. Well, we don't think we can do it, so let's appeal it. And that alone will just give you another couple of days, because the appeal process takes that long.
And that would be great, because that might be the couple of days you need before being discharged. So that would be something really important for the viewers to understand, that could be done while you're in the hospital, and then you get the extra couple of days before the appeal process can happen. So.
And then for Medicare Advantage plans, you know, there's something in their handbook. You know, everything that outlines the coverage for Medicare Advantage plans in their handbook, including their appeal process, and you have to follow that appeal process, which is different than the Medicare process. And then Medicare D, you know, for prescription drugs, you can appeal some of those decisions as well. You can appeal any decision that you don't like. And that is, you have to go back to your Medicare Part D plan and appeal to them. And then they have to start recording and tracking the appeal. You can then go to and they only have 14 days to get back to you, because usually we're talking about prescription drugs and you need them.
Right.
You know, and because administratively they decide you don't need them, the doctor still prescribed them. So so there's a 14-day turnaround on those. And if the issue is critical, you know, you can push for a 24-hour turnaround time. So if the timelines are not met, you know, you can appeal to Medicare, and Medicare will direct the Medicare Part D plan to make a decision. And if you don't have any results thereafter, you can go to the Boston Medicare site in Boston, HHS site in Boston. There is one, and you have to appeal to them, not to Medicare, but to the regional office. And throughout all of this, there's a group, a Medicare advocacy group, that helps people through this process. It's not an easy process, and there are a lot of things. You know, every time you get any letter from CMS, on the back is always the appeal process. And if you just want some fun, turn around and read it sometime and say, oh, I don't want to ever go through this.
Now, is the Medicare advocacy group, is that pro bono, or would someone have to, that would be good to know for everyone to know that that's pro bono. So if you felt like you needed help with the appeal process, don't be afraid to contact the Medicare advocacy group.
Correct. And can I give out their phone number?
Absolutely.
It's 800-323-3205. No,
I think that's great. I actually have had contact with the Medicare advocacy group because they did a program for us in the Massachusetts chapter of NALA. So they're great. They were very forthcoming. They came and they gave a great program. And so I think they're a great organization. If the viewers feel like they need help, contact them. Do they have a website as well? I believe so.
I think so, but you have to use the phone number, because there's a group of different attorneys that I think donate their time for this purpose.
Sure. You know, can we backtrack on the observation? You know, when you were talking about Part D, I was thinking about Part D and conversations you and I have had about people not being aware that they may not, if they're not admitted, they may not be getting the prescription drugs covered through Part D.
Yes,
can we kind of let the viewers know about that? Because that could end up costing them a lot of money as well.
That could well. When you're in the hospital, normally Medicare Part A, which is inpatient, covers your prescription, all the drugs that they give you while you're in the hospital, whether it goes in your arm or your mouth. Because you don't usually bring your pill bottles with you when you go in the hospital. So, but if you're under Medicare B, you're outpatient, well, now Medicare A is not going to pay for those drugs. and so your Medicare D plan has to pay for them. But the hospital's out of network for the Medicare D plan, so they're not going to pay. So the patient then is responsible for all the drugs that were administered and the people that administer them, even though they, just brought them to them, handed it to them, and they drank them, to put them in and drank them themselves. So,
yeah, and we all know that hospital drugs are sometimes more expensive
yes.
than drugs from CVS or Osco. So that's important to know that if you aren't admitted and you're only going to have the coverage from your B program, that you may not be having the, your Part D cover the drugs. And if you're on a lot of medication, that could be a big cost to you.
Could be a big cost.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I was wondering if you might want to talk about that new program. It's called OneCare that's come out. I know it's really for an age group that we're not necessarily talking about right now, but it's something that I thought that it'd be good for the viewers to know about.
Right. This is a new program in Massachusetts. It's run through Mass Health, and it's a OneCare program. It's available to folks who are eligible for Medicare and under age 65 and eligible for Mass Health. So you have to be what we call dual eligible for Medicare, eligible for Mass Health, and so that you have, and under age 65. So so this is people who have a disability.
Disability. That's what I was going to say.
And what the program, a lot of people aren't happy with Mass Health and finding Mass Health doctors. So this is a program that is really administered and managed for each patient individually. And part of the program is wonderful. All the prescription drugs, there's no copay for. They includes dental coverage, and we can go on and on about dental coverage and
dentures
what that is as a problem for seniors.
Yes.
So I mean, just to include that piece of it. Now there's only one. There's several companies in Massachusetts that are participating in the pilot program of OneCare, but the only one in our county is Commonwealth Care Alliance. And if somebody wants to contact them, their phone
Sure,
number
absolutely.
is 866-610-2273. And again, you have to be on Medicare, you have to be on Mass Health, and you have to be under age 65. And on paper, this looks excellent, because they'll drive you to your doctor's appointments. They'll give a chair car there. They coordinate your doctor's appointments, but you have to use their network of doctors. There's something you have to give up. You have to use their network of dentists. You can't use maybe your regular dentist. So there are some fallbacks, but financially, it doesn't cost. There's nothing. There's no out-of-pocket expenses. There's no premiums for the program. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful care.
Have you found people using it yet, or is it still just so new that people aren't really that familiar with it?
I really think they're exploiting the more populated density areas where there's, because they do assign a personal care person to oversee everybody's care, and with not enough density here in Medfield. So I don't see them reaching out and pushing. I've talked to a number of folks and say, you should look into this, but they haven't, So I don't know anybody personally that's in the program yet.
Okay. There's so much to discuss with regards to Medicare, but we thought we'd want to touch on a few of the topics that we feel that people are talking about: the observation versus admission, the Jimmo case where you don't have to show improvement, even though, as Ron said, nursing homes are a little nervous that could get repealed. But before we wrap up, do you want to is there anything else you wanted to add to today's discussion?
Well, I'm going to follow up a little bit on this OneCare again a little bit,
great.
And that's because one of the requirements was to be on Mass Health.
Yes.
So a lot of people might not qualify for being on Mass Health, but if you're disabled, the easiest way to qualify for Mass Health is to get a job. Now, I'm not being funny here. That job can be anything. If you work 40 hours a month, and that job can be dog walking, could be babysitting a grandchild. There's a lot of things that you can do. There's no pay requirement. You can get $1 an hour, but if you have employment for 40 hours a month, then you're a working disabled adult. And everyone who's a working disabled adult will qualify for Mass Health. And it's just a question of what premium they'll pay. So even though they may be well over the income limits for Mass Health, they will still qualify, and they may have a premium that they have to pay for this care, but it's well worth it.
Yeah.
And then they can get into one care.
Is there asset, if there's no income, is there an asset
If you're
qualification?
under 65, no asset considerations.
that's good to know.
It's a big thing when you turn 65. Everything is asset-based and income-based. But under 65, just about everything is income-based, and nobody counts assets. And that's why I love the Prescription Advantage program I talked to. It's only income-based. It's one of the few programs that doesn't look at assets, so a lot of people qualify for that.
And you said that the income scale was so low that most people qualify anyway for
Right,
that.
so
for that
generous, right, yeah.
So, do you want to add anything else before we close for today?
No, I think I've added my last thing.
All right. Well, Ron, I appreciate that you once again came to the program and offered such interesting information, and I know very useful information. So once again, I want to thank the viewers for tuning in, and until next month, stay well.
Production support provided by Medfield.tv. Access to our community.
Hi, my name is Toby Burrell. I am president of the Medfield Lions Club. The Medfield Lions Club is one of 46,000 Lions clubs that have 1.3 million members worldwide. That makes the Lions the largest service club organization in the world. Where there's a Lions Club in the community, problems get smaller and communities get better. Locally, the Medfield Lions are involved in two primary missions. We raise money to benefit eye disease research, and we also raise money to benefit local Medfield charities. No doubt you've seen us in town wearing our distinctive yellow vests, raising money for eye disease research. Our single largest fundraiser each year is the Christmas tree sale. Every penny of the proceeds goes to charities such as the Medfield Food Cupboard, the Medfield Animal Shelter, and scholarships for graduating Medfield High School seniors. We sponsor the Seniors Luncheon at Christmas as well as the Chowderfest contest each year. All the proceeds from these very popular events go to benefit the Council on Aging. Interested in volunteering? As a member of the Medfield Lions Club, you'll be joining a group of service-minded men and women who are doing local volunteer work to benefit Medfield right now. We are your friends, we are your neighbors, we are local Medfielders, and we would love to have you join us. For further information about membership, please call me, Toby Burrell, at 508-359-5210, or you can email me at tobster9@aol.com. Or check us out on Facebook. It's facebook.com/Lions Clubs. Thank you.